This is me on the 8th of March 2025, aged 23, 6'4", 237 pounds, and north of 20% body fat. And then this is me around 14 weeks later, 197 pounds, likely around 6 to 8% body fat, and substantially more tanned. But how did I get there, and how can you get there? Well, let's break that down step by step. Here's the full roadmap of how I did it. First of all, this wouldn't have been possible if I didn't go all in. This isn't something I'd want to do year round, as it does somewhat restrict your life. Realistically, the effort and adherence needed to lose 40 pounds in 14 weeks is a bit more than you probably want to put in all year round, so bear that in mind. And then let's talk about non-negotiables. I tracked everything: steps, cardio, caloric intake, training sessions, water intake, even salt intake at the very end. Let's start with training, and in all honesty, it was no different than how I trained beforehand. My training philosophy has always been lower volume, focused on getting stupidly strong, and mainly opting for stable, machine-based movements, which are particularly useful when trying to get stronger whilst losing large amounts of body weight a week. I followed the upper-lower split that I have on screen now, usually training Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday and Sunday, as this worked best for my schedule. And for me, this means spending 5 days a week in the office in a busy corporate job in London. Cue Wolf Wall Street scene. Next, let's touch on diet, the non-disputed driver of fat loss. I always start my diets very aggressively and then taper off as we approach the end of the diet. At the start, you're the least hungry and the most motivated, so you're more likely to battle through a larger deficit, as well as being less likely to experience chronic hunger and poor mood. So I cut my calories straight down to 3,000. That might seem high to a lot of you, but previously I was at north of 5,000, so quite a large deduction. Typically, I'd drop calories by 200 when rate of loss stalled, and I was aiming for more than 2 pounds a week on average of fat loss. I actually dropped 8 pounds in my first week, so you should expect a greater rate of loss at the start than at the end. Bear in mind, however, that 8 pound would have been predominantly water weight and inflammation. Later in the phase, I actually switched to training day and non-training day calories, which ended up at around 2.4k on training days and 2k on non-training days. This allowed me to keep carb intake higher around training, and then on rest days I could prioritise fats and take a lower carb approach. Meals basically stayed the same every day for that 14 weeks, and they look something like this. You may ask, what about cheat days? And to be completely honest with you, I had 0 cheat days. No cheat meals or snacking. The only thing I did do was a refeed in week 10 and week 13, after training performance began to decline a little bit and I became a bit of a grump. Here I took 2 days where I simply doubled my carb intake, and this in fact drove fat loss even more due to the positive impact it had on my body to actually function again. In terms of expenditure, the baseline was set at the start of 10,000 steps a day, and this slowly tapered to 12,500 by week 11. This was pretty easy, to be honest. I made the effort to walk to a train station slightly further away, and I'd go for walks at lunch and for 10 minutes after every meal. Cardio, initially I wasn't doing any at all, but this eventually increased to 2 sessions of 25, 3 sessions of 25, and then we ended up at 3 sessions of 35 minutes by week 12. This was all done fasted, and I eventually introduced Yohimbine at the tail end before my cardio sessions, just to strip off any small slivers of fat that were remaining. But most importantly in this phase was how I set up my lifestyle. I was pretty much asleep by 9:30 PM every day, and I'd wake up at 5 AM every morning. This gave me ample time to meal prep, get my steps in, and stay ahead of the day. I cut out alcohol entirely, and to me this is a non-negotiable when you're trying to yield the most substantial results over a short time frame. Apart from that, I also tried to install novelty within my routine. I do my steps in new places, picked up hobbies that weren't food or drink related, and just became a bit more of a sensible adult. So that's the entire roadmap. It wasn't magic, it wasn't some kind of secret supplement or motivation hack. It was just structure, precision, and doing the boring things over and over again for 14 weeks. And here's the important part, I don't live like this year round. This was just a phase, a deliberate, controlled sprint. And once it was done, I transitioned back into a sustainable system that keeps me strong, lean and productive. Remember, the goal isn't to diet forever. The goal is to build a physique that actually fits into your real life, especially if you've got a career, responsibilities, and you actually want to have an enjoyable lifestyle. So if you want to look like a bodybuilder without living like one, that's exactly what this channel is about. And if you want me to show you exactly how I do this on a daily basis, then check out my 8-day course linked in the description, which you can get entirely for free. Drop me a subscribe and let me know if this helped. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.